That's fine. I don't want to force people to come here if they're content to watch it from a distance, and obviously a lot of people are. Yeah, there they come. Anyway, let's see. I should be fine here. All right, so next week we got a guest speaker. I may be a little late, but Dylan will take over as the host to make sure she gets here on time. I will have just gotten in an hour before. Anyway, from Rochester with the CPTC team. They're competing in Rochester. They won and made it to Nationals, and that's the Nationals next weekend. So I got a few news articles that I thought were interesting here. So Google has a bug in their bug tracker, which is sort of silly. But anyway, they have a platform to deal with unpatched vulnerabilities. You can log in and submit bugs, and you can unsubscribe from channels to learn about bugs. And this guy, Alex Bersan, found out that you can unsubscribe from channels that you never subscribed to. And he was able to use that to deduce what was happening in those channels. And so it leaked out information about these supposedly confidential bug reports. So he told Google, and they paid him a bunch of money. First 3137, 31337, then 5,000, then 7,500 for the 3 bugs he found. And they say they patched them before anybody exploited them. So that's pretty good. This guy has, I think one of them, yeah, Ted Lieu, Democrat from California. He wants to make the Cyber Shield Act, which would set security standards for Internet of Things devices. And it doesn't state those standards. It's going to assemble a committee which would have 1 year to determine what standards there would be, and then they would put labels on the things you buy to see how secure they are. So that'll be interesting if any of that happens. We'll see.
So that's just a law to create a committee?
Yeah, it's a law to create a committee which will then make a law. So the committee will have to have experts who will decide what the standards. I know Mudge was present for this 3 years ago. Cyber UL listing, because that's what when electricity was new, a lot of people got their houses burned down from bad electrical appliances. So they declared they came out with UL listing, where there's this rating you put on the thing to tell consumers whether it's considered safe enough. And the idea was to do that for security on internet devices. Yeah.
Seems like that'll be harder because it's really software maybe that's most likely culpable to, like if they do, it gets stamped with secure, but then they do a software update later, it might totally change things.
That is certainly an issue, whether a later updates would break it. So I would think that you'd have to keep re-rating your products as they go through generations, but I'm sure there will be issues. The other big issue, I think, is that people can't decide exactly what would mount to
what you want to eat, okay?
Although I would think they would just take like the OWASP top 10 list or something, but there are different schools of thought about that. But it seems to me that if you just made like the top 3 or 4 things, it shouldn't have an unchangeable default password, it shouldn't send unencrypted network traffic and stuff like that, that would go a good way towards helping. So here's another statement from the Attorney General, and they're reporting this saying he asked that you keep plain text versions of every message, but as usual, I do not think that is what he said. Encryptions, I support strong and responsible encryption, he says. They should retain the capability to give the government unencrypted copies. Now, this is nothing more than the FBI has been saying for at least 5 years. They say, you can encrypt it any way you want, but you should have some way to decrypt it when you get a court order. And that is true of the telephone network. It's not true of the internet yet, and that's what the FBI has been asking for. And the technical community seems to have a vast majority refusing to do any of this at all, saying this is absolutely terrible, you can't make us do this, this is awful. And of course, the history of previous attempts like the Clipper chip and poisoning ECC have showered people on this, but I'm not so sure that they're going to win this. I think if they refuse to budge at all, they'll have something rammed down their throat. We'll see. Anyway, it's I seem to be in the distinct majority in the tech community. I don't think this is unreasonable for the cops to say, when we come with a search warrant, you ought to be able to hand over the data. I don't think it's unreasonable to say you should be able to take your iPhone to Apple and get them to save it from your lost password. They used to be able to do that. I don't really understand how they want to make a product where they can't do that. I think most customers do expect to be able to recover from a lost password by going back to the manufacturer and proving they own the device. But anyway, we'll see what happens. So these guys are going to make a cannabis-infused beverage. The same people make Corona beer. So they say they're going to manufacture it from Canada and sell it all over. But there's a minor issue, which is that it's illegal according to the federal government in America, although it's legal in many states. So they're not quite sure exactly how they can sell it and get away with it, but we'll see. So let's see what's happened here. They can recover from a lost password. Well, that's interesting, Rachel. Can they actually recover your lost data, or can they just wipe the phone clean and restore an empty OS on it? Because, I mean, they told the FBI, well, they told the FBI that they couldn't get on a seized phone from a dead terrorist at all. So I don't see how that's different than a lost password. And if you understand this, I'd like to know more. And we'll see, maybe more messages coming. But I certainly, it used to be, before I think iOS 8, that they just had a backdoor. You could go to the store and they could get in a backdoor. And I think that's what most people expect, including the FBI. And I don't think they're totally insane to expect that. Anyway, so once again, their malware protections on Google App Store are bad again. And they like through this cryptocurrency stuff we've been hearing a lot about from CoinHive. CoinHive made software you can run in a browser that would mine Monero, and they said you should tell your users and have them pay you in this way for some kind of service. But they made it so it can be run without alerting the user, and it was therefore used by a bunch of people without consent to run your CPU up to 100% and find coins that go to someone else. And then they were hacked, and someone redirected all the coins from CoinHive to someone else. And then they shut down the business, but the software is still around, and people have been putting it in apps that end up in the Google Play Store. So it continues to make the rounds. And this is just, once again, Google, all of Google's attempts to clean up Google Play seem to fail. They seem to be unable to solve this problem, which I think is intrinsically a very hard problem to solve, because they let you put up apps for free anonymously. And therefore, if they kick somebody out, they can just make a new free account with a different name and put it up there again. And the only effective way to stop this is the Apple way, where you cannot put things up. You have to pay a fee, and they have to know who you really are. And when you put up bad stuff, they ban you, and you really can't get back in. And that's enough punishment to really hold the number of people putting up poison apps down to a very low level, to where the Apple Store is really clean and the Google Store is really dirty. And on it goes. Here's another comment. Yeah, if law enforcement comes with a warrant. Well, if you can send me any articles about this, Rachel, I'd like to see them. I think that is exactly the issue. I think when law enforcement goes to Apple with a warrant, Apple says, no, we cannot get the data. And it's been that way for 2 years. And that's what led to this current storm. And I'm rather surprised that there's like 90% of the community lining up behind Apple and saying, oh, yes, we should never give the cops anything under any circumstances. And the cops are saying, it's never been that way for paper records or human testimony or things you lock in a safe deposit box or paper mail or anything. There's never been anything you're allowed to hide from real search warrant. So why does the internet get this special exclusion? And I think that's kind of sensible. Yeah. Well, but they could.
Well, but then even then, they could give them the encrypted paper and then have your aid waived.
That's true. It's an interesting issue. Yeah, they could. Well, anyway, there certainly are a lot of there's a lot of argument going on, and then about whether you have to hand over the key or not is another issue. Some people have been forced to hand over passwords in the past, but this is the current battle.
That's good.
Yeah. What's that?
Question. I seem to remember that under the Fourth Amendment, the Supreme Court has said that in terms of a warrant, when there are what we call exigent circumstances,
right,
you go around that.
That's right. You do not need a warrant for exigent circumstances. Like if there's a kidnapped victim and you're trying to find them, you're allowed to violate rights to seize things to find them.
Yeah.
I know. And so that's what the FBI is saying. When they had the terrorist, there was a terrorist that did some kind of terrorist attack in Southern California. Then he got killed in a shootout, and then they grabbed his phone. And they said he might have another bomb somewhere.
Yes.
We need to get this phone. And Apple said no. And that went through the courts. And the FBI finally paid $1 million to a third-party hacker to hack into the phone. That's how they got it. But Apple never budged. Their current position is there is no way in our phones at all. We can't even do it, no matter what the government does to us. And they're holding firm on that position. And the government is increasingly yelling and screaming and saying, you really ought to let us in when we come at you with the correct court authority. But Apple's claiming that it is within their rights to make products that are impossible to get in at all, even for them. And that's what they're doing. But that has not been tested at the Supreme Court. It would have been, but the FBI withdrew their complaint when they found a third party that could hack into the phone. And so that's the other way to go, is to just get third-party hackers to hack into the phone, and then the courts have no real authority at all here. And we never really set a precedent. And that's where we are now. Anyway, so we're up to the real time. I'm going to get to the official stuff here. So here we are at 141. All right. And we're down to public key cryptosystem based on discrete logarithm. So let me start this. That is chapter 8. All right. And that's probably here. Indeed it is. All right. So we're going to talk about Diffie-Hellman key exchange, which is what started it all. This was the public reinvention of public key cryptography, which had been a military secret up until that time. I skipped the section on some algebra because it was pretty dense. It's group theory, which I felt like was beyond the level of math that I expect people to have for this course. If you're up for the math, it might be nice, but I think we can accomplish our goals without getting that deeply into it. But the discrete logarithm problem is worth knowing, and security and the algorithm, those are sections that I covered. So
did you make a project that's extra for the group theory one? Or like,
a project that does what?
You said we skipped the group theory portion.
Right. I did not put it in the projects.
Oh, can you put it in the extra credit one?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll think about it. Let me see.
Are these slides come with the book?
What's that?
Are these slides come with the book?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if they officially come with the book. They were published by the book publisher for a previous version of the book. So I'm updating them.
Books,
Online.
I think it's online if you just Google for it. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you want those slides, yeah, they're available. If you just Google for them, that's all I did to find them. They're not behind a paywall or anything.
When you say group theory, you're saying the same set theory?
No, it's more than set theory. It starts with set theory, and then it defines groups, and then it defines fields.
Well, rings and fields.
Rings and fields, yeah. And it's abstract algebra, and it's fine stuff, but it's not really where I think telling the prerequisites for this course do not mean someone's necessarily ready for that if they're taking this course, although it's fine stuff. Anyway, so Diffie-Hellman works like this, and it is very simple, very easy to understand, but it is just a key exchange protocol. By itself, it does not do the encryption. All it does is exchange a key, and then you use something else like AES for the encryption, which is not part of this protocol. So here's what you do. Choose a large prime and an integer of any sort and just publish them. They're available for the whole world. That sets the stage for this. And then the two parties are going to each choose secrets, A and B, and they're going to exchange numbers created from A and B without ever trading A and B. A and B are the private keys. Each person has a private key, and the public key, one of them is alpha to the A and the other one's alpha to the B. And they're going to trade those things, and they're both going to calculate this somewhat. One person is going to calculate alpha to the A to the B. The other one's going to calculate alpha to the B to the A, which will, of course, be the same number, but they arrive at this number without ever sending that number over the internet. They send numbers that are related to that number, but only in a way that they can't be found unless you can factor a large number into its component primes, which is a difficult problem. So this is the game. Alice chooses a value A, and then she calculates alpha to the A, and she sends that to Bob. Bob chooses B, and he calculates alpha to the B and sends it to Alice. Now they can each calculate this thing, alpha to the A to the B and alpha to the B to the A. Now they both know a number that did not ever get sent over the internet. And so now they can use that number to perform any kind of encryption they like AES or DES or triple DES or anything like that. They've got a key now that they can use. That's the game. And it will work fine as long as you have primes long enough and as long as nobody can derive little a from big A. Big A and big B are what type of network, and those are powers of alpha to the A and the B. So that's the game. Here's an example with some numbers. Alice can choose 5, and Bob can choose 12. So alpha, everybody knows alpha is 2. So the public key is 2 to the 5. which is 32. 32 mod 29 is 3, so Alice sends 3 over to Bob. That's capital A. Bob chose 12 and took 2 to the 12. Alpha's 2, 2 to the 12 mod 29, and that's 7. 2 to the 12 is 4,096. So I'd have to use Python or something to check it. But that's 7, so he sends 7 over his B. Now, she takes 7 to the 5, mumps to her secret key, gets 16. He takes her number, which was 3 to the 12 to get the same number. And they both agree on this number, 16. But they never sent that number over the wire. The numbers they sent are related to that number, but not in a way that's easy to find for large numbers. That's the game here. So that's this is the discrete logarithm problem. And this is the problem that makes it secure. You always have to have a difficult problem. This is really why cryptography is kind of nuts. Cryptography is not something you prove perfectly. It is just, you have to find a situation where there is some calculation you can do reasonably fast that is really difficult to reverse. And then you can do the reasonably fast part to encrypt and decrypt, and the hard part is to reverse it. So this is the problem. The problem is, if I know alpha, beta, and p, what power do I have to take alpha to, x, to get beta mod p? That's a logarithm problem. That's what they call a discrete logarithm problem. And that problem for large numbers becomes very difficult. As usual, we are left with the statement that if this problem is difficult, Diffie-Hellman will be secure. If something happens to solve this problem, the whole thing will be shot. And you never have a proof that there is no fast way to do it. You just have the opinion of mathematicians and computer scientists that so far it appears to be really difficult. Nobody has published a known way to do it fast. All right, and so by the way, this means, in principle, you could have, if you have modulus a prime number, like 7, then your numbers go from 1 to 6. 1, p minus 1.
0 to 6.
What's that?
0 to 6.
In principle, 0 to 6, but here we're only doing the field. So we're only going from 1 to 6.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's G star. They don't include the 0.
Okay.
It's a field and not a ring. A field and not a, anyway, so but the point here is, it might not be true that you can generate all the possible numbers with alpha. If you can, then it's called a primitive element. However, for prime numbers, everything is primitive. Because remember, when we've done this before, if you have modulus 9 and you have 3, and take 3 squared and 3 cubed and 3 to the 4th, you just keep hitting the same numbers over and over. And that will only happen if the number you're generating from alpha can divide the modulus number evenly. And so if you choose a prime modulus number, that will never happen. That's one reason why you want a prime number there. Then you can choose the alpha you want, and you'll be able to hit all the numbers up to the prime number. That means that's called a primitive element, is an element which when raised to powers generate all the elements of the group. All right, so here's mod 7. 3 is a primitive element. So 3 to the 1 is 3. 3 to the 2 is 9, so that's 2, mod 7. 3 to 3 is 27. So 7 times 3 is 21. That gives you 6 as the remainder. 3 to the 4 is 81. You take away 70. You take away 7, you have 4 left. 3 to the 5 is 243, and that works out to 5 mod 7. And this is 1 mod 7. And the thing to notice is all the numbers are here. I'm going from 1 to 6, and all the numbers are generated by starting at 3. So 3 is a primitive element. In this ring, you can raise it to enough powers to generate all the possible numbers. Of course, it's a lot easier to just do it in Python. Just make a loop and print 3, print a label, and then calculate 3 to the I mod 7. So that's how you can do it. So my alpha is 3. All right, so now I can talk about the digital logarithm problem. If I can make this whole chart of all the powers, then I can solve the digital logarithm problem. So if I want 3 to the x equals 4, then I need 4. 3 to the 4 is 4. If I want 3 to the x equals 1, the answer is 6. So you can do it for this simple case by brute force, just enumerating all the powers and hunting down the chart. But of course, if it was a huge long number, that would not be possible. And that's the point. This is the simplest attack, the brute force attack. All right, so I got a few Kahoots about that stuff. And let me log in and let's see, there is a comment. Was that Celebrite? That's a very good question. Was it Celebrite that did that for the FBI? That was what the rumor was. And then some people said it wasn't Celebrite. And as far as I know, no one ever publicly took credit of hacking into that phone for the FBI. I do not think it was ever revealed exactly who did it. All right. So we're down to here. Play. Classic. And there is no music. There it comes. Okay, 1903368. My pen. Record winners. Okay, 141. 10:30. All right. Okay, I got 10 people. Oh, they're still coming. Okay. No, wait, another 10 seconds. All right. Okay, so which value is published openly? All right. That's P, the large prime. Where's the shared secret? That's it, alpha to the A to the B, which on the other person calculates as alpha to the B to the A, both getting the same number. Which value must be prime? That's P. All right. So in this digital logarithm problem, what value are you seeking? Okay, X, of course, the power is what's missing. That's why you call it a logarithm. All right. So R. Dugan and NH, I think I know who that is, and Joker, I don't know who that is. Is Joker in the room? Well, Joker will have to tell me who they are at some point.
I think all those answers were blue also.
Oh, well, that could be. There's only a sample of 4.
I don't know if that was a question.
Oh, I think it is. Yeah, I don't think there's any pattern in it except the first time when I hadn't set it to randomize. Anyway, all right. So here are discrete logarithm problems that are used currently in cryptography. There are a variety of them. The simplest one is the classic one used by the Diffie-Hellman key exchange, where you use the multiplicative group of the prime field, which means you're taking the numbers from 1 up to p minus 1, where p is a prime number, and you're multiplying numbers together or raising them to powers. All right. I saw a comment from online. Let me see. Maybe it's just an identity. Let's see who it is. Yeah, okay, good. I got your name there. Okay. Good. All right, so that's the first one. Now the second one is the elliptic curve, which we're going to talk more about next time. Kind of a crazy thing where the operation is moving, connecting 2 points, moving to the vertex. Then there's a Galois field, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce it, which is a field of 2 to the m, or a subgroup of Galois. Galois. Good, thank you. Anyway, you can use it, and then there's something called hyperelliptic curves, and those exist, but the last two are very rarely used. The main thing, the original system used the prime number field with multiplication. That was RSA and Diffie-Hellman exchange, and that became the standard. And then elliptic curves became popular because they're cheaper to run. Calculations are faster and the keys are smaller. And these other two have got really nothing going for them at the moment, and nobody much is jumping on them. Mathematicians have developed them in case we need them, but there's no large number of people using these systems because the other ones are just as good as far as anybody can tell. Of course, quantum computers will really rock the boat, and all these may be gone, replaced by something else in a couple of decades if quantum computers become a reality. So here's the attacks against the discrete logarithm problem that really exist today, not including the theoretical quantum attack that cannot be done yet as far as anybody knows. There's brute force, which is what I just did on the simple p equals 7 issue. Then there's something called Shank's method and Pollard's method and Pohlig-Hellman method. Those work in any cyclic group, and then there are special ones that work only in the prime number multiplicative field, ZP. That's called index calculus. I've also seen it called the number sieve. And all the big cracks of RSA have been using the number sieve. This is the best method currently known. So here's your generic method. You're seeing brute force search. You just have to calculate all the powers until you've generated all the possibilities and then find the one you want. The baby step, giant step method is just a time memory trade-off like rainbow tables. You make a table of some of the calculations, so you look up things instead of recomputing them just to make it faster. And Pollard's row method is probabilistic, like our test for prime numbers. You remember a couple lectures back when you'd have a prime number, you'd run it through a test that will detect if it is not prime some percentage of the time, like half the time, and then you just do that test many times until you have a high degree of confidence that it's prime. Just the same kind of thing, and that turns out to be the most powerful algorithm to use against elliptic curves. And the Pohlig-Hellman method is based on the Chinese remainder theorem, which is not in your book, surprisingly enough, although I put a little bit about it from Wikipedia here. But the point of a Chinese remainder theorem is if you have a large group that is made of a non-prime number of elements, you can factor that into the prime groups and solve a bunch of smaller problems instead of solving that one big problem. So in order to prevent this attack, you must make sure that your group order has its largest prime factor pretty big, 2 to the 160. Remember, the group order is p minus 1, so it's not prime. So that does limit your choice a little bit. And here's what little beginning Wikipedia about this. That's the point of this. It's a theorem of number theory that lets you take an integer n, you can find its divisors, and you can predict, you can crack into it by doing smaller groups. So this gets you down to something like the square root of the number, depending on what the prime factors are. But it means, like to say here, that you have to make sure that there is one factor that is very big, one as large as prime factor. So it can't be factored into all small groups, or this method will get in quickly. And the non-generic algorithm is the index calculus method that works only on the multiplicative group of primes and not on elliptic curves. So here's the record. In 2005, they cracked 431 bits, and then they got it to 768 bits in 2016. And that's why the NIST told us to knock off using 1024-bit RSA because it's getting too close, and they told us you'd go up to 2048 or longer. And that's the game. So in order to prevent this, they say you should have at least 1024, but your book is a couple years old, and the modern recommendation from the NSA is to move to even longer ones, 2048 or 3072-bit keys. Now, elliptic curves run with much smaller keys. So the largest one, there's a series of elliptic challenges. These RSA, by the way, come from challenges. RSA, when they first invented the method decades ago, they put out a bunch of challenges. So encrypted stuff to crack at all different lengths, and they even offered big cash prizes, several $1,000 for everybody that would crack them, although they quit paying cash prizes a few years ago. but they left it up there for 10 or 20 years and paid the prizes to encourage people to test it so they would make people feel confident in their algorithm, saying, we paid people and they only got this far. If you use keys up here, you're okay. And that's what's going on here. And there's also a series of challenges for elliptic curves out there. And the 108 and 109 bits have been cracked, but not the 131 bits. So as far as anybody knows, 131 is uncrackable. All right, so here's the security of it. Now, one issue, of course, is the man-in-the-middle attack. There's no protection here against a man-in-the-middle attack. If you have an attacker who is able to intercept both transmissions, then they could send Alice makes up A and small a and sends capital A over the network. The attacker in the middle makes up a different A and sends a different capital A over here. Bob makes up a small b and sends a capital B here. The attacker makes a different B and sends a capital B over here. So both these people think they're encrypting to their other person, but they're really talking to the person in the middle who has all enough keys to be.
More stuff was on. Nothing's on out there, right?
Yeah.
Look
Anyway,
out the hallway.
let me mute those folks. All right. Anyway, so that's the point. If you don't have a trusted third party or some kind of shared secret that was previously sent through a trusted channel, there's no way to stop this attack. That's the fundamental weakness of this. You're going to have to add a certificate authority or something to this mess to make up for that. The key exchange method here does not include any defense against a man-in-the-middle attack. All right, but what it does protect you against is the passive listening attack. If you have someone who is just listening on this channel, but they are not altering the data, then they know the public numbers, which are alpha and P, and they know capital A and capital B. And that's it. And of course, that's the point. If that's all they know and they're going to get any further, then they have to solve the discrete logarithm problem. They have to go from capital A to small a. So they have to find a small a where alpha to the A gives you capital A. And that is the discrete logarithm problem, and that is the problem that has been considered difficult and in practice proven to be difficult. So that's all there is to it. Nothing too deep. Now, so this is Diffie-Hellman key exchange, and then you imagine they might use AES, which is what RSA does, but you could make a complete encryption scheme just out of this and nothing else. And so this is what El Gamal is. So without adding any other scheme, what you do is you calculate an ephemeral key, and then you encrypt it the same way. You take your plain text and multiply it by that key mod P. That's the encryption algorithm. And you decrypt it by multiplying it by the inverse of the key over here. And you can both calculate that independently because you both have the same shared key. So this is the way it looks, very much like the original exchange. In practice, you can make it into just two transmissions. Where Bob starts it off, he chooses alpha and P and B, and then he calculates this public number, which I call him beta here, and sends them this way. Alice makes up her public key, which is what would be A, and sends it this way along with the encrypted ciphertext. And the point is Bob can calculate the key and decrypt it. So it's just, it doesn't involve any normal symmetric encryption routine particularly. It just uses the same thing you're using to encrypt the key. Encrypt the data as you're using to exchange the key. So that's an alternative. I'm not aware of any commercial products using El Gamal, but it's been studied a lot and it's around if anybody wants it. Well, as far as I know, it's about the same as RSA. We'll see if they get any more information in the book here about it. So key generation, you have probably about 1024 bits long. The encryption requires two modular exponentiations and a modular multiplication. So you got to use the square and multiply, which is the same thing we use for RSA. And decryption is similar. So I didn't find a test for it. If I could, I haven't tested the way we tested the other ones. We import them into Python and use them. It would be kind of interesting to do that. Find a Python. I think I didn't find a handy Python library when I was looking for it. But it would be fun to do, compare it to things like AES and RSA and see if the speed is different. But I think it's not much different. Elliptic curve is much faster. That's why it's a hit, like 20 times faster. I can't believe this is going to be very much different than RSA. Anyway, so the passive attacks are just as strong as anything else because it relies on the digital logarithm problem. If the attacker only has these public numbers, then they have to solve the discrete logarithm problem. to find the private numbers. So as long as your key is 10 to 24-bit long, you're all right, according to your author. And like I say, I'm sure the same recommendation from the NSA applies that it should really be 2048 or 3072 these days. And just like the others, a man-in-the-middle attack will defeat it. Once again, you have no trusted third party, you have no previously shared secret, so the man-in-the-middle can just lie to people at both ends, and you'll get them. By the way, there's another attack here. If in the El Gamal system, you have to use a different private key for every message. If you use the same private key over and over, then an attack becomes possible, because the attacker can guess the plain text of one message, they can use it to decrypt another. And that is close to some of the signature forgery attacks that I've done in CTFs, and I'm not quite sure whether I want to add them to this course in the project or not. But in principle, you can calculate, if you have two signatures, you can calculate a valid third signature from them by multiplying them together if they use the same key, because the signature is just multiplying it to a power. And the same problem is going to happen here. So you notice Y is X times K to the M. So if I multiply this by another factor, I'm going to create a valid secret. It's sort of like what you did in that last week's mathematical attack where you do the padding oracle. You can create ciphertext that will decrypt to something more or less meaningful, even without the key. And for signatures, you can multiply two signatures together, and you will create a valid signature for the multiplication of the plain texts. And so depending on how they're encoded, like if it was just a number, then that would do it. And that was what the CTF I did. It had a number that was 32 bits long, and you could make up to 600 guesses before you had to predict one. So if you give it the first 600 primes, that's enough to get a lot of all the numbers up to 10 to 32, like 10% of them. So you have a 10% chance of being able to generate any one you want by just multiplying those primes together to get the large number. So that's a problem here. And that's why you don't want to have multiple messages encrypted with the same key. All right. So that's the game here. Diffie-Hellman uses these cyclic groups, and it's based on the discrete logarithm. So I've got another bunch of Kahoots here. And then I just want to talk a bit about some of the projects. Let's see if there's something here. Okay, why does SSH use Diffie-Hellman instead of RSA? SSH uses RSA in most cases, although it can also use ECC, and you will find that it also uses a key exchange. So if you go to, here, let me just do this. This is a good question, and it's easy enough to bring it up right here. In fact, this is secure right there. Let me just bring up Wireshark, and let's look at this in practice, because we are using Diffie-Hellman and RSA at the same time. If I sniff, and then I got to stop and go to a different capture options. I've got to quit doing monitor mode. All right, because I'm seeing wireless that I don't want to see there. Okay, so now start. All right, so now let's go someplace like AOL is even secure now, I think. It is. All right, so if I stop, and now I find the handshake for AOL, which I'm just going to look for frame contains AOL. Huh, how rude. All right, there. Here's my query. Okay, so now here's my client hello and my server hello. And here's secure sockets layer. And I'm going to see, this is, okay, here we go. Here are the types of encryption that my browser offered. So there's the elliptic curves, and here's the other ones. I think the next packet might be even more fun. The server hello. One of these is going to have a list of all the ciphers available. And let me go ahead, maybe I'll get to the change cipher spec. Should be up here. Let's follow this stream. Okay. And there, here's the key. Here's the change cipher spec and the key exchange. And the change cipher spec. All right, let's take the key exchange. There we are. So here's what happened. I am using Diffie-Hellman elliptic curve. That's what we settled on. So it's got a signature algorithm, and it's using Diffie-Hellman and in particular elliptic curve. Now there was one of the other earlier steps here that offered all the available ciphers. And I am not having much luck finding it. Let me try I think it's in the client hello. Let me try that again. So I think the client tells it all the protocols available. Yes, here we are. Here's what I'm looking for. Cipher suites. There we go. This is the part that's pretty easy to read. So this is what's really used by TLS. Most of them use Diffie-Hellman exchange. This is elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman exchange is really a hit. Some of them are using RSA with AES. Some are using RSA with triple des. Some of them are using, here's Diffie-Hellman exchange. You know, there's many different options here, but you are using Diffie-Hellman exchange as part of RSA. It uses Diffie-Hellman exchange, and then it uses AES in almost every case, although here it's using Cha-Cha 20. There are all these options. That's what my browser speaks, is all those things. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show you. RSA does include Diffie-Hellman, but SSH generally uses RSA. Anyway, all these days, a lot of it actually is done with elliptic curves. All right, so let me go to here and find my other Kahoot, which is here. Okay. And bring them up here. All right. 389 2813. I kind of doubt that there are 10 million Kahoots in use simultaneously, but anyway, that number would be 7 digits anyway. What's that?
Didn't the number only have 6 digits?
It used to only have 6 and sometimes only 5. And the last week it's now having 7. So I wonder if they're just not refreshing it often enough, or if there really are 10 million Kahooters all at the same time. All right, I'll wait another 5 seconds. Wonder if you could figure out, what this number is, maybe you could break into Kahoots and maybe they give you a bug bounty, or maybe they prosecute you. Anyway, so, all right, so 5 of these. All right, what group does DHKE use? Diffie-Hellman key exchange. All right, that's ZP, the group of multiplication on integers going up to primes. All right, what's the fastest attack against ECC? All right, that's the row method. I know they're all just meaningless names here. A little bit of that going on. Which attack is based on the Chinese remainder theorem? All right, that's the Polig-Holman method, for what it's worth. All right, which attack works only on ZP? All right, that's the index calculus one, also called the number sieve. All right. And the last one, what attack will defeat it for all key sizes? All right, good, that's the man in the middle. It has no defense to that. All right, so Joker is 6, NH is 6, and password. All right, I think password is Mark. All right, so let me just say a word about the project because there's one here that's a little bit screwy. Let's see, this may be someone telling me. Yeah, that's what I thought. Joker is Mark. Okay, good. So down here is the Exodus wallet and Coinbase. And both of these involve some real money. So, yeah, good. Thank you, Mark. All right. Not large amounts of money, but in order to do, you get an Exodus wallet, which you can download and run on anything. It can do everything except Bitcoin for some unknown reason. It does Ethereum and all sorts of other things. And you have to get some money, so just email me and I'll send you some Ethereum, or you can get another student to send it to you. You can send small amounts of Ethereum. When I sent Ethereum here, I sent $2 and it cost me 6 cents to send it. So that was pretty cheap. I think one of the students, I sent them 30 cents and it cost 6 cents. Ethereum transmissions are cheap. That's one advantage of it. And now this one is Coinbase, where you actually use Bitcoins. And I'll send people Bitcoins too, but the fee is like $3 now to send Bitcoins. I'm not worrying about that. There's not that many students, and throw around a little money is fine, but you be aware of that. Let me know when you get set up and I'll send you some money. You have to actually have some real money in here to complete the project. So you see how it goes. The Coinbase account, you're trusting them with your private key and your money if you leave it up there. So it is not considered wise to leave large amounts of money up there because they could get hacked or steal it or lose it. What's better is to put it on your own machine in something like this wallet. This wallet is local, it's all on your machine, and you can encrypt it with a password, and you can copy the wallet files and put them on a thumb drive and take them off your computer and hide them in a safe or something. And that's what you should be doing if you have a significant amount of currency. Anyway, I just think you ought to get used to a little bit of handling real cryptocurrency here. Not that I entirely recommend gambling in this stuff, but this is part of using it. Yeah.
So Coinbase also has a Vault account.
Ah, yes, they do.
And what's like the level of trust you have in something like that?
That's a good question. Peter, for the online people, he says, Coinbase has a Vault account, and how much do you trust it? It is really a question of philosophy and politics. I don't think Coinbase would steal it. Coinbase has a very good reputation with law enforcement, but they are under a lot of pressure from law enforcement. So they might be compelled. In fact, they've already been compelled to hand over some records to the FBI. And so the question is what you're doing with it. If you're trying to conceal your money to do illegal things, or you're hoping to invest it and earn profits and not pay taxes on them, then Coinbase is probably not going to work even at their vault accounts. And in other exchanges have lost it even in the so-called vaults. They claim to have stored them offline, but the problem is if the owners of the exchange betray you, they can steal it. That's why, in my opinion, it is an amateur's move to leave a large amount of money in any kind of exchange. There's just no need for that. You could put it on your own system where you control it, and then there'd be no question. But you certainly should know how to do that. And it's important to understand this as you move forward, because, as I've said, one of the careers that you might look into is blockchain developers. They're paying a lot of money for that. And people who actually understand the real considerations of making blockchain platforms are in high demand right now. And that's one of the examples where you don't need to know everything about cryptography. You just need to know enough to understand what you're doing and have some practice with blockchains. And you'll see, by the way, these previous projects, I've seen people doing them in the lab where you make your blockchain stuff with multi-chain. It's kind of confusing. You have these long addresses to throw around, these two machines and these. But the point I want to explain is the reason why multi-chain is great is because it solves the double spend problem. Bitcoin has a double spend problem. You can spend money, and that money might not get blocked. The transaction might not get mined for a while. And it might not get enough blocks mined after it to be irrevocable for a while. And in that time, you could spend it again. So you could buy two products with the same Bitcoins and run, and it won't be till later that somebody finds out that you did that. Because the actual logging and making the transaction immutable happens at a different time than the exchange. And the point, one advantage of multi-chain is you can prevent that. If you do an atomic exchange transaction, you trade one asset for another, and you lock some of this asset, you make a single transaction which you trade some A for some B, and when someone agrees, the whole trade happens. There's no way to do half the trade and have the other half happen later. The whole thing happens all at once. It's like the PayPal escrow system. If you go to PayPal, I had a student go to PayPal and pay $1,000 for a computer and then never get the computer. And she told me, so I did it to somebody else to get my money back. But now I'm wanted. I was, holy crap. Anyway, but this is, they have, if you pay a 1% fee, I think, they will hold it in escrow, where you order the computer, you send the money to PayPal, they hold it until you get the computer. Then you check it out and you tell them if it's okay. And when it's okay, they give the money to this person. And if you don't like the computer and you say you want your money back, you have to ship it back to the person and they have to say they got it, and then PayPal gives you the money back. That's why a trusted third party can prevent this stuff. And Multichain can do that in the intrinsic thing. So that every exchange has both transactions happen at the same time. Yeah.
Just a comment about the Coinbase Vault and stuff.
Yeah.
I think as long as you follow the terms of service,
yeah,
they will insure you up to $250,000 worth in
yeah.
case anything goes wrong.
Well, that, okay, and the statement here is that Coinbase guarantees to insure you up to $250,000. And that sounds good, but of course, if they were to just steal the money and flee, I don't think that would do any good. And if the government was to shut them down by deciding what they're doing is illegal, I don't think that would help. And that's why, you know, I'm just saying, and those are not small risks. Those have happened to people many times. Vietnam just outlawed Bitcoin. And, you know, the US government could at any moment, just like there's law enforcement people yelling about encryption, some of them are also yelling about cryptocurrency, saying all these things do is make it easy to commit crimes. And, you know, it could happen that they decide to declare them illegal and seize the assets. There's a thing called asset forfeiture, where they can just steal your money if they feel like it is somehow being used for crime. And I haven't heard anyone make this argument in public, but you could certainly say that anybody with $1 million of Bitcoin must be a criminal and we should just steal the assets with asset forfeiture, and you might get away with that. So just in general, I can see how I'd rather have it under my own control than trust some exchange.
There's a guy in jail for 20 years because he started like Instant or something, one of the first companies, and they got him for money laundering. That's
correct. That's right. Some people have been prosecuted for money laundering, also theft. It's, you know, that's why, you know, I wouldn't put a large amount in somebody else's repository. It's just unwise. Of course, I don't have enough money to worry about. Yeah.
For blockchain, is it they have intrinsic atomic transactions?
For Bitcoins, they do not have atomic exchange transactions. Well, these are all blockchains. Blockchains, so some blockchains have this feature of atomic exchange transactions and others don't.
But the user initiates the atomic transaction, right?
Anybody can initiate one. Anybody that wants to sell, this is the same thing happens with stocks. I say, I will give you 1,000 shares of GE for $10,000. And that's a transaction. I give you this, you give me that. And we have a trusted third party, which is the stock exchange, to make sure that happens. And that's what, and of course, the whole philosophy of Bitcoin is you're not supposed to trust anybody. All blockchains are supposed to be trust-free. So you build it into the system so you can still do that without a trusted third party. And that is something that some blockchains can do and other blockchains can't do. And Bitcoin can't do it right now, at least not easily.
So the user want to make sure he got the stuff, so he do the atomic transactions?
Yes, the atomic exchange transaction makes sure that no one can take your money without giving you the product. Because those two things happen at once.
But the user can still, like, don't use atomic transaction, they can still do a double spend, right?
With an atomic exchange transaction, you cannot double spend because you have.
The user don't use
Oh yes, I think you can also use multi-chain without atomic exchange transactions, and then it's no more secure than Bitcoin. Absolutely. But the difference is in PayPal, you have to pay a fee for the escrow service, and in multi-chain, it is free. It's just more complicated. So, and of course, the complexity that we go through is just because we're the engineers that want to understand the system. Your real customers would just have a wallet doing all that for them. We'd program a little web page where they just click a button and it does the atomic exchange transaction. Of course, the other thing is the atomic exchange transaction only works if both assets are digital. If one of them is physical, then of course the blockchain can't really control at what point you exchange that. Yeah. It's just a file. Your wallet, the wallet you create with this local wallet, like Exodus, just lives in a folder on your machine. It's just like a Word document. You can put it on a thumb drive, put it on another machine.
But how do you do in another machine? How do you load the file in?
You reinstall Exodus and then open it. By the way, you can also.
When you open it,
By the way,
once you open it, it always comes to the local machine, right?
Yes, you put it on the local machine.
But
And-
if you have a new local machine, how do you?
Well, I'll tell you something else about Exodus. I lost my file, lost my password, and it doesn't matter. In Exodus, when you, Exodus is a memory wallet system. This is what's generally the case. So when you set up Exodus, you're going to get a series of numbers when you create your wallet.
You mean the wallet account?
Yes, it's going to give you a series of words. And if you remember those words, you can recreate your wallet anytime. There's a series of about 10 words, and those words create all the keys. This is how memory wallets work.
In where in the Exodus?
You can put them in.
No, but in where you get it to look for your.
What you do is you delete the local files or rename them, and when you start them, it will create a new wallet, and it'll ask you, do you want to create a new wallet at random, or do you want to type in the keys and regenerate your old wallet? So as long as you remember those 12 words, you can regenerate your wallet anytime. And that's the modern system, is memory wallets, where you have these sort of passwords you remember, and you don't even need a computer at all. You can even delete all the files off your computer and put those on a piece of paper somewhere, and you can always get your Bitcoins later. That's the idea. Except it doesn't hold Bitcoins, but you can get your cryptocurrency later. Nobody can steal them from you without those numbers, and you can wipe them off your machine, so even if hackers get root on your machine, they still can't get them. And that's what you should be doing if you're investing in cryptocurrencies in any large amount.
I heard that memory wallet was broken, or they figured out the algorithm or something.
Memory wallets can be hacked, but not Exodus. See, the point is, a memory wallet can start from just a normal password. And if you choose a simple password that can be guessed, then someone can guess it and get your coins. And that's what I saw Dennett Hope. But if you use Exodus, it will automatically generate a long one with like 12 random words. And those long ones, as far as I know, there's no way in. However, that's coming from some random number generator somewhere, and that might not be perfect. So, but that's the problem with memory wallets, of course, is if it all is only secure as your original key, original seed. If your original seed is like a song lyric or something someone can guess, then they can get your Bitcoins. Yeah.
In Exodus, when you create your account, but when you ask somebody to send you money, you have to give the other person that same account number, right?
Oh no, you give them an address like this. You get them a receive address, and this receive address is not a secret. That's a public key. So that's how it works. The receive addresses are public keys calculated from your private keys. Your private keys are all created from your original seed. And you just keep hashing it over and over and over and over to make a chain of seeds. So this number is a public address. That's your private address. The private address proves you own the keys. You can't spend them without the private address, but you can receive on the public address. And as you can see, this is really long, so a lot of bits. So as far as anybody knows, it's perfectly fine. You can publish these to the world. Like anybody wants to send me money, you can. That's really my address. It doesn't mean you can spend my money, not unless you can factor this and derive my private key. And as far as anybody knows, there's no way to do that. However, if we get quantum computers in 20 years, then people can steal the money out of my wallet. Any other questions? Yeah.
Have you heard of localbitcoins.com, where you could find people who will meet in person, and you give them cash, and then they'll send Bitcoin to you?
I think I have heard that. Yes, this is actually kind of an issue. So I'm a localbitcoin.com, where you meet people in an informal way to buy Bitcoins. And this may become more and more popular because Bitcoin exchanges are being shut down everywhere. The government regulates it at the exchange level. When you change real dollars into Bitcoin, or the reverse, is where the government steps in and says you are a bank, you have to pay taxes, you have to have records. And so these informal things are one way to do it without government approval. They're probably technically illegal, but probably right now the laws are very unclear. But it certainly is one way to get around it, sort of a barter system.
One thing I was thinking though is that if I was going to go buy Bitcoin,
yeah,
wouldn't I want to wait around with that person for like an hour to make
sure? Yes, you would. That's one thing that worries me. The same thing's true of eBay. People are meeting and then getting mugged and shot and stolen. I mean, if you just do meet some random guy and try to buy some Bitcoin, how are you going to prevent him from ripping you off? And it's an issue. At the very least, you ought to wait an hour. And if you are at all hazy on the system, they could do something like send you a theorem and you wouldn't know the difference or something. I mean, it would be real easy in this confusing space to somehow trick you. And that's, as far as I can tell, the primary way people make money out of cryptocurrencies is by confusing people and picking their pocket, by having an ICO of something worthless and getting them to invest, and then you just sell it and run. You pump up something with lies. Pump and dump is huge. All the standard exchange fraud forms are rampant in this space. And that's why law enforcement people and bankers just have a really bad attitude about it, because in practice, most of the people are just jumping into a meat grinder when they get into this space and start investing, because there's crooks right and left and people throwing out baffling terms. And you got to be really careful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more question. Do you know if the fork in the next month is going to take that, like where you have to wait an hour? Will it speed up that time so you don't have to wait as long to verify?
That's a good question. He's asking if the fork is going to speed up Bitcoin. I do not think so. I read some articles about it, and I'm not completely sure. I know that the big fork is segregated witness. The big issue Bitcoin is trying to address right now is the fact that the blockchain is full and that transaction fees are too high. So by making more room on the blocks, they can make it transaction fees go down. I don't think anybody's very interested in making it faster. Ethereum is much faster. You can find out if you do the project. Ethereum mines a new block every 15 seconds. Bitcoin mines a new block every 10 minutes. So Ethereum is much more reasonable. Something is pretty final in just a couple minutes. And I think Bitcoin doesn't have any, the Bitcoin community doesn't seem interested in competing in that space. As far as I can tell, they don't like to say this, as far as I can tell, Bitcoin is not much use as a medium of exchange. It is primarily a medium of storing money like gold because of the high fees. And Ethereum is much better for medium of exchange. And Putin declared last week he's going to make the e-ruble, and it sounds like it's going to be based on Ethereum. They're going to make the official Russian cryptocurrency, the government cryptocurrency, and so we'll see what comes of that. All right. Well, I think I'm going to stop the share. I'll go to the lab and help anybody who wants help in projects. All right. Oh, there's a chat statement. Let me see. In the eyes of law enforcement, cryptocurrency use is almost tantamount to being an endpoint Tor user. That's a fair statement. You can trade from an Exodus wallet. You can spend money from an Exodus wallet. You can receive money in an Exodus wallet. And I suppose you can exchange it from one type of cryptocurrency to another, but I'm not really sure. These are good questions. Can you use your regular credit card for the Coinbase project? You can if you like. That's what I did. And I say, are there any attacks on Coinbase? I haven't heard of any successful attacks on Coinbase, and they do have a bug bounty program. And I tried to find some weaknesses and get the bug bounty. I didn't get any, but I'm not that hot shot at it. So Coinbase, as far as I know, has a very good reputation, both for security and for obeying the law. They are really the classiest act in Bitcoin exchanges right now. But everything is really up in the air about Bitcoin, so even the safest place might not be safe enough. Yeah.
Coinbase, you're getting the Bitcoin back to US dollars is
Yes.
it can be pretty difficult, because in some cases you need to verify your identity with your social security, and they outsource that
Yes.
service, and that service is really bad at it. But you can connect a bank account,
Right.
and it'll take like a week or something.
Yeah, that's an issue, and I've seen that. If you want to move any significant amount of money at Coinbase, or you want to turn your Bitcoins into dollars at Coinbase, then it takes time and is burdensome, and that's because of the government and all their banking regulations. All their anti-money laundering stuff really gets in the way, and because Coinbase is really trying to do it legally, and all the previous exchanges just didn't worry about the law, and that technique is kind of hit the end of the road in America. Yeah, and here's RTM says they have a well done, a good security team at Coinbase, which is what I've heard. I've invited them to talk here, but they seem to be too busy making money. Also, the Multichain people, they're a local. I tried to get them to come, but I can't get any of these people to come talk to our class. They're all off making piles of money instead. But anyway, she's coming to talk about the dark web and exchange encrypted chat protocols and crime on the internet.
One more question.
Yeah.
What do you think about Litecoin?
Litecoins have been around for a while. They're certainly better to mine than Bitcoin. Bitcoin mining is useless. Litecoin mining is considered still productive. other than that, it's about the same as any other of the smaller, second order cryptocurrencies that floats around. They kind of all follow Bitcoin.
All right.
Yeah, good. All right, have a good night, folks. I'll be in the lab for people who stick around.